Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. It is Friday, January 3rd, 2025. Wow, look at me. Didn't even mess up the date. I'm your host, Jon Jeune, at the real Jon Jeune _FF on X as well as Instagram, and you are watching the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. And so thank you for joining us here in this lovely new year. Hopefully you had a fantastic new year. As we talked this past Tuesday, hopefully you guys were crowned champions. Hopefully maybe a stat correction went your way. Maybe you're feeling great about that. Maybe a stat correction didn't go your way. Maybe you're not feeling so great about that. But either way, you still made the decision to be here with us. So definitely appreciate that, whether you were watching live on YouTube, Twitch, X, Spotify, or you might be watching or listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play. Definitely appreciate you, however you have decided to enjoy this content. Just make sure while you're there, you comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Goes a long way to help the show out. Doesn't cost you anything. But what are we doing here? Week 18 fantasy football matchup show. Why a week 18 fantasy football matchup show? For those folks that just so happen to be playing in a week 18 championship, or maybe you just couldn't get enough of football and fantasy, so you want to come on here and listen to some matchup discussions. By all means, be my guest. How did we do last week? Last week we gave out 16 picks. 5 of them beat their ECR by 10 spots or more. Another 3 of the 16 beat their ECR outright. We had 3 misses, 4 big misses, and 1 tie. So I say all in all, it was a solid week for championship week. We had some solid hits. The misses, some of them don't feel so great about. Some of them, the process was there, just didn't come through. So in terms of the big hits, Jaleel McLaughlin was a big one. Came in ranked as the running back 74, finished as the running back 24 there for Denver. So we called him the most trustworthy Denver running back, and I think he proved that last week. Amir Abdullah, that was a big one. Came in ranked as the running back 30, finished as the running back 7. Now that one, it's funny because I had his teammate on here as well, Alexander Madison, and we will get to that one in a little bit. But speaking on Abdullah, I think I might have mentioned this, when discussing it on air, but I actually trusted Abdullah a little bit more just because of the passing down work. So I don't think we ever saw him or thought that he would get, he'd be a guy that would end up with 20 carries, which I think was what he saw on Sunday against the Saints. So definitely an awesome performance there if you went with Amir Abdullah in championship week. Devontae Smith came in as ranked as a wide receiver 29, finished as the wide receiver 4, even with Kenny Pickett and Tanner McKee there at quarterback in for the injured Jalen Hurts. Adam Thielen, guy we tend to have gone to almost every week, came in as the wide receiver 32, finished as the wide receiver 8. And then Olamide Zaccheaus, ranked as the wide receiver 65, was able to finish as the wide receiver 13. So those were the big hits there this week in championship week. Some really good hits. Brock Purdy came in as the quarterback 11, finished as the quarterback 5 against Detroit. So great matchup there, and he came through, with a top 5 finish there. Antonio Gibson came in ranked as the running back 37, finished as an RB3 as the running back 34. And that one we cheapishly got there, finished with 6.3 points, where if you watched that game, that was a miracle. I know, I got the news of Chuba Hubbard being out kind of last second there. And, I went and picked up Antonio Gibson and stuck him in my starting lineup. That Saturday, just said, hey, let's go with this. He's a guy that I obviously brought up on the show. And so, I take my own advice. If you didn't know, but Antonio Gibson, for him to walk out of that game with 6.3 points after we were told he'd be the starter, after we were told he would, see most of the work. He did not start. He did not see most of the work. A lot of the work that he saw was when the game was pretty much out of hand. So that kind of sucked there to see, but still finishing as a top, as an RB3 here, I think was a miracle in and of itself. Malik Washington came in as a wide receiver 68, finished as a wide receiver 61. That didn't help anybody. Also with that one, I think, I know for a fact had I known, Tua was not going to play because he was downgraded later that Friday from questionable to doubtful with the hip injury. I would have never mentioned Malik Washington. So, I hope that with the Tua injury, the Tua news, you didn't even consider Malik Washington there with Tyler Huntley at quarterback. Moving on to the big misses, Kamani Vidal ranked as the running back 39, finishes running back 60. And now, if you recall when listening to the show on that Friday, I did mention that this is completely contingent on the J.K. Dobbins news. If they activated him by 4 p.m. that Friday, which they did, then I would not go with Kamani Vidal in any capacity. So hopefully you listen to that. Alexander Madison came in and ranked as a running back 27, finished as a running back 44. Again, process was there with that one. Still saw the carries and the touches that we would expect, just didn't convert on his usual touchdown opportunity there. And then Daniel Bellinger ranked as the tight end 31, finished as the tight end 72. If you had told me that the Giants would score all of those points, they would beat the crap out of the Indianapolis Colts, and Drew Lock was going to combine for, 4 touchdowns? What would Daniel Bellinger's stat line look like? I would tell you that I was like, oh, he probably, had, 3-4 catches, maybe 30 to 40 receiving yards, maybe he got a touchdown. But Daniel Bellinger walked out of that game with nothing. I'm almost positive it was nothing, but it was nothing. It felt like nothing. So, hopefully you didn't have to go with Daniel Bellinger. You weren't in that spot. He had 1 catch for 5. No, he had nothing. Nothing, not even a stat, not even a target. So hopefully you didn't have to go there with Daniel Bellinger, but if you did, I sincerely apologize. Jaden Reed last week, that's a guy you probably went with, ranked as wide receiver 36, finished as the wide receiver 109. So that one there was unfortunate, especially in a game where Green Bay was trying to make this comeback and they were down for most of it. You would have thought that Jaden Reed would have been more heavily involved in terms of the touches and the opportunities. Only saw 4 targets, 1 catch for 6 yards. So yeah, it's quite unfortunate there in championship week for Jaden Reed to have a performance like that. And then moving on to the misses, Drake May finished as the quarterback 27 after being ranked 21. Also to leave the game with a concussion there for a little bit. It was such a weird quarterback week. Like it's just a very weird quarterback week. Um, with some of the guys where they finished, and how some of these other quarterbacks ended up scoring like a ton of points relative to what we've seen in various weeks, right? Like for example, Mac Jones was scored 17.2 fantasy points, but finished as the quarterback 16, right? Um, Behind, like an Aiden O'Connell. Tyler Huntley was a quarterback 11. Um, so it was just Drew Lock was the quarterback 3. It was just a weird week. Oh, Drew Lock combined for 5 touchdowns, actually. Anyway, just a weird week at quarterback position. Aiden O'Connell, 17.6 fantasy points, but he's a quarterback 15. Right. But either way, Drake May, finishes a quarterback 27, 9.9 fantasy points, only 117 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 32 yards on the ground. And the 1 touchdown was off of a 12 man on the field penalty that he took advantage of, or was an offsides penalty. I think there might have been an offsides penalty, but either way, not Bellinger, Drake May didn't come through for us at the quarterback position. If you went there, Kyler Murray ranked as the quarterback 12, finishes the quarterback 18, 16 fantasy points. Again, that was another one where it was like, you look at the stat line, 33 of 48, 321 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 4 carries, 32 yards. It's like a halfway decent day, but he's the quarterback 16 or quarterback 18 with 16 fantasy points behind Bryce Young and just ahead, tied with Kenny Pickett and just ahead of Joe Flacco. So weird quarterback week. Again, don't think the 16 fantasy points is what killed you in championship week. But you took that from Kyler, I guess, reluctantly. And then Chigakonkwo finished as a tight end 17 after being ranked a tight end 12. Again, 10.9 PPR points from him, which I think is a solid outing that you would have signed up for if I told you, hey, Chig is going to score 10.9 PPR points this week. Would you take it or leave it? You'd say I'd probably take it. Just you didn't know that would end up in the, quarterback 17 range this week, behind guys like Kyle Pitts, Foster Moreau, Jawan Johnson, Payne Durham, right? So, again, weird tight end week along with the quarterback week. So, anyway, we are in week 18 for the championship week for most of you. For some of you, not going to say most of you, some of you out there playing. And I'm sure you want to know what the weeks ahead look like. So we'll get into that as well as, near the end of the show. But without further ado, let's jump into the matchup show. And it'll be short and sweet today. There's not a whole lot to discuss in terms of matchups and things. Like I said, week 18 is a different week. It sometimes requires us to look at a lot of the information and things that are happening. And sometimes we might look at it a little differently than we would other weeks, right? So starting with the Cleveland Browns against the Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Brown running back Deontay Foreman ranked as the ECR PPR running back 34. Both Ford and Strong are both DMPs, have been both DMPs all week. And are in danger of missing this game on Saturday. So Foreman here slots in as a touchdown-dependent RB3 with some RB2 upside. The matchup here is not great. Baltimore allows the 24th most PPR points to the position over their last 3 games. However, we have seen cases where Foreman comes in, sees a ton of volume, and he'll see 20 carries, might even get over 70 to 100 yards. And fall in the end zone. And if that happens, then we're looking at a halfway decent day there for Foreman. The game script being a 19.5 point dog doesn't really bode well for the 20 carry opportunities there. But if he's the only healthy running back, then that means he should probably be playing passing downs as well. Also, Cleveland is going to want to stick to this run heavy approach, even against a tough Baltimore run defense. So the opportunities should be in line there for Foreman. So again, I think an RB3 with a touchdown dependent RB3 with some RB2 upside is reasonable expectation there for Foreman. Moving on to the next Saturday game, 8 p.m., Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh. Let's talk about Pittsburgh running back Jaylen Warren, ECR running back 21 this week, has scored 14 plus PPR points against the last 2 weeks. Matter of fact, he scored at least 9.2 PPR points in 7 of his last 8 games and double-digit PPR points in 5 of those games. And actually, since this same span, since week 10, Warren has outscored teammate Najee Harris, outscoring him in each of the last 2 games. So he's definitely worth a look as an RB2 in PPR leagues. Again, there is some risk that Pittsburgh could sit their starters or key players after the news of the Baltimore game, because they'll get that outcome. They should get that outcome right before kickoff of their game, or as they're getting set to kick off their game. So it's possible that Mike Tomlin pulls his starters or key players. But I think as we get more information in terms of how Tomlin's going to handle this, we'll get an more clear understanding of how to approach our Steelers players, from Pickens to Russell Wilson to players like Jaylen Warren here as well. Moving on to Cincinnati, Mike Gesicki, PPR tight end 15 via expert consensus rankings. He has 12 targets last week in overtime, possibly no or a limited Chase Brown this Saturday, who's expected to be a game time decision. So that could lead to more passing, as well as more targets here for Gesicki against a Pittsburgh defense, allowing the 4th most PPR points to the tight end position over their last 3 games. Moving on to the next game between Carolina and Atlanta. Let's talk about Atlanta quarterback Michael Penix Jr. He's the ECR PPR quarterback 12. It's a must-win game against a Carolina defense, allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to the quarterback position over their last 3 games. And it's also a great spot for most, if not all, actually, of Atlanta Falcons offensive weapons, right? So Bijan Robinson in a great spot, as well as Drake London and Darnell Mooney are in great spots as well. Staying in this game, staying with the quarterback position, just moving to the other side, let's talk about he doesn't play for Tampa Bay. He plays for Carolina. Carolina quarterback Bryce Young. He's the ECR quarterback 14. No Chuba Hubbard, playing with a vulnerable Carolina defense and also against a vulnerable Atlanta defense, allowing the 12th most fantasy points to the position over their last 3 games. So another nice spot here for Bryce Young. Moving on to the Washington game, Washington versus Dallas. Let's talk Washington wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus, ECR PPR wide receiver 44. He was the wide receiver 6 and the wide receiver 13, respectively, the last 2 weeks, with 23 plus PPR points in each of those games on the back of 17 targets these last couple weeks, which actually lead the Commanders. And he's up against a Dallas defense, allowing the 4th most PPR points to the position. He's on fire right now. Let's stay in the flame with Olamide Zaccheaus for the Commanders. Moving on to the next game, we've got the Chicago Bears traveling to Green Bay. And let's talk Green Bay running back Emmanuel Wilson. And now we're getting into the age of these backup running backs, potentially, that might be seeing an opportunity, not because of injury, but because of potential rest of a starter. And so Green Bay doesn't have much to play for in this game, as I talked about on Tuesday. But they're also 10.5-point favorites. So it makes you think that they're going to play most of their starters for most of this game, if not all. However, as 10.5-point favorites at home, it's not improbable that Josh Jacobs sees a reduced workload in this one. We saw him pretty much sit out the whole most of the third quarter and the entire fourth quarter of their game a couple weeks ago against the New Orleans Saints, which led to some opportunities for backup running backs Chris Brooks as well as Emmanuel Wilson. And if the Packers get out to a strong lead here, then it's definitely possible that Josh Jacobs takes a seat. Josh Jacobs even also said that he would most likely would not see his full allotment of work this week. They've got more important things, ahead of them, playoff positioning, or not playoff positioning, but a playoff spot already in hand. And with Josh Jacobs being the engine that makes this offense go, very, very likely that they try to rest him and you see more opportunities for backup running back Emmanuel Wilson as well as the other backup running back and Chris Brooks. But I think Emmanuel Wilson is probably the safe one to go with if you're looking for some running back help. Staying at the running back position, moving on to the Houston Texans against the Tennessee Titans. Let's talk Tennessee running back Tony Pollard. Now, this one's a tough one. He's ranked as the ECR PPR running back 46. Him and Spears are both dealing with some injuries, but Spears has been a DNP this week, while Pollard has been limited. Houston does not have much to play for in this one, and they allow the 10th most PPR points to the running back position over their last 3 games. Moving on to the next game between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. Let's talk Jacksonville quarterback Mac Jones. He's ranked this week as the ECR PPR quarterback 18. Matchup here is really good for Jones. 6th most fantasy points allowed to the quarterback position over their last 3 games. The Indianapolis Colts do. Mac Jones has scored 17 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games, and seems, just so happened that it seems that being the guy who throws the ball to Brian Thomas gets you a decent amount of fantasy production. So Brian Thomas seeing about 39 to 40% of the team targets. That should bode well for Mac Jones and his fantasy production going forward. But, I guess going forward, there's only 1 week left in his season. But this week against the Indianapolis Colts. Moving on to the next game here, we've got the New England Patriots against the Buffalo Bills. And let's talk New England tight end Hunter Henry, as he's ranked as the ECR PPR tight end 13. Definitely has been a roller coaster season playing Hunter Henry, but the matchup here is good, and he's still averaging 4+ targets per game over his last 3 games against the Buffalo defense, allowing the most PPR points to the tight end position. Moving on to the next game, we've got the New York Giants against the Philadelphia Eagles. And again, backup running backs here, but looks like Saquon Barkley will not play, will not get a chance to attain those 100 rushing yards, 101 rushing yards that would put him in the lead as for the most rushing yards in NFL season. So Kenneth Gainwell is probably going to see some work, but I can't imagine he'll see a ton of work, as he is, the primary backup to Saquon. And if something happens to Saquon, there's not really much that the Eagles have behind, behind Saquon to make you comfortably feel like, that he, they'd be able to replace some of that production that they would lose. But Will Shipley, a draft pick, was he was like an okay college prospect. I think known for his ability to catch the football, make plays on the edge. We haven't really seen him catch the football at all. We haven't really seen a whole lot of him, only 20 carries on the season, 50 rushing yards or so. But this is probably an opportunity for them to get a long look at the rookie. And it's against a Giants defense that has, not been very good, specifically against the run as well. So definitely an opportunity here for, the Giants allow the 6th most PPR points to the running back position. So Kenneth Gainwell also could end up in an opportunity. I would just like listen to that and how the Eagles plan to approach it. But I think Will Shipley has some value there as well. Kenneth Gainwell is ranked as a running back 28. Uh, so he's another guy I think is definitely in play, but just see how they handle that situation with the Philly running backs. But I think there's some value to be had there. Moving on to the next game, we've got the New Orleans Saints against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I don't know how I keep getting the opportunities to choose this guy, but I'm going to do it every time. Jalen McMillan, ECR PPR wide receiver 27, has been inside the top 20 each of the last 4 weeks with 6 touchdowns during that span. I mean, there's not really much to say here with Jalen McMillan. Get him in your lineups. Moving on to the next game, we've got the Kansas City Chiefs against the Denver Broncos. And let's talk Denver running back Jaleel McLaughlin, ECR PPR running back 22. Again, came through last week as the running back 24. I think he's once again in a good spot here and the most trustworthy Denver running back. So willing to go to this well here again. Speaking of going back to Wells, let's talk the LA Chargers against the Las Vegas Raiders. And let's go back to the Alexander Madison well, ranked as the running back 39. Again, he seemed to lose his feature role to Amir Abdullah, which, again, having to choose between featuring Amir Abdullah and Alexander Madison, not great options. But Madison still saw 13 opportunities in the game last week. He just wasn't super effective with them, which we've known about. It's not a surprise that he was inefficient. We've expected that. He's been living off of these touchdowns, but he's still getting those opportunities around the goal line. So I think this week he's an RB3, desperate flex if you are so desperate. But I think that's where we go with Madison this week. Moving on to the Seahawks against the Rams, another backup running back, Blake Corum. He's ranked as the ECR PPR running back 25. Again, possible workhorse role here for Corum, who could see a decent amount of volume with Kyron Williams potentially being rested in this game. Moving on to the Jets against the Miami Dolphins. Let's go with New York Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson, as he's ranked as the ECR PPR wide receiver 21. Again, we talked about Wilson last week, but he saw 8 targets last week, which is the most he had seen in 3 weeks. I'm expecting that trend to continue. I guess the Miami defense, he last had a 7-catch, 114-yard performance against back in week 14. Moving on to the San Francisco 49ers against the Arizona Cardinals. Let's talk San Fran quarterback Joshua Dobbs, as he's ranked as the ECR PPR quarterback 20. Dobbs will be filling in as the starter for the injured Brock Purdy, and we saw what Dobbs was capable of last year in starts for both the Arizona Cardinals as well as the Minnesota Vikings. And we know he's not afraid to use his legs either, so it should be an easy path to a potential QB1 finish, given the cast of characters that we have starting at the quarterback position this weekend. And don't forget, revenge game 2. So on the Arizona side, let's look at Arizona running back Michael Carter. He's ranked as the ECR PPR running back 24. Both James Conner and Trey Benson were sent to the injured reserve. So looks like Michael Carter happens to be it for the Cardinals this week, along with DJ Dallas, who will probably form a committee, but Michael Carter should see a bulk of that work here against the San Francisco 49ers. Moving on to Minnesota against Detroit, game of the week, Sunday Night Football, the NFC North Championship for the right to be crowned the 1 seed in the NFC. I think this is totally fascinating because you have a situation here where neither one of these teams know what's in store for them next week. I know they both have plans, but the winner of this game will have no game next week. They'll have home field advantage throughout the NFL playoffs or throughout the NFC, through the NFC Championship game if they make it that far. And then The loser of this game has to go on the road next week for a playoff game. This is absolutely fascinating when you just think about what's at stake here for both of these teams, both these franchises. And I'm excited to watch this game. I think it's going to have a feel of a playoff game. Highest total in the week, 56.5 points. Close spread with the Lions only being 2.5-point favorites at home. So, anyway, I digress. Just make sure you tune into the football aspect of it. But on the fantasy side, let's look at Minnesota wide receiver Jalen Naylor. He's ranked as the ECR PPR wide receiver 48. Naylor has seen his snap rate increase the last few weeks. He seems to be the clear number 3 wide receiver for the Vikings in terms of snaps played. Saw 5 targets for 81 yards and a touchdown last week. And now in another must-win game and what's expected to be a competitive with a back and forth nature to it, it's more than possible that Naylor is involved in this pass game here against the Detroit pass defense that's allowing the second most PPR points to the wide receiver position over their last 3 games. All right, y'all. Moving on to the Week 18 starts of the week. Week 17, it was Baker Mayfield, the highlight of the week, came through as the quarterback 2 for us last week. At running back, Chase Brown in overtime, dealing with an ankle injury, finished as the running back 13, as T. Higgins scored 3 touchdowns. So I feel like that probably had a lot to do with the running back 13 finish there for Chase Brown. Terry McLaurin finished as the wide receiver 111. 1 catch, 5 yards. Not a great performance by Terry McLaurin, as he was absolutely erased by A.J. Terrell, and Olamide Zaccheaus saw most of, if not all of, the production there for the Washington Commanders, wide receivers. And then Chig Okonkwo finished as the tight end 17. We kind of talked about him already. Not start of the week material, but I think still a solid week there for him with 10.9 PPR points. Moving on to the Week 18 starts of the week, starting with the quarterback position. Give me Minnesota quarterback Sam Darnold against the Detroit Lions. Darnold has been delivering with 3 QB1 performances over his last 4 games in a must-win matchup against the Detroit defense, allowing the most fantasy points to the quarterback position over their last 3 games. Darnold is a top option this week. I think he has top 3 potential this week. Moving on to the running back position, let's look at Seattle running back Zach Charbonnet against the LA Rams. With Kenneth Walker on the injured reserve, Charbonnet steps into a lead role here for Seattle, facing a Rams defense with nothing to play for, and as a 6.5 point favorite. Expect a positive game script and plenty of work for Charbonnet, who's set for a big week. Moving on to the wide receiver start of the week, let's look at Atlanta wide receiver Drake London. London and his new quarterback are starting to gel. Last week, he hauled in 7 of 13 targets for 106 receiving yards. This week, he faces a Carolina defense allowing the 6th most PPR points to the wide receiver position over their last 3 games. London is poised for a strong finish to the season that maybe could lead to a playoff bid here for Atlanta, but probably not. Moving on to the tight end start of the week, and yes, I'm going back to the Chig Okonkwo against Houston. Chig didn't quite hit last week, but he's in an even better spot this week. Houston allows the 3rd most fantasy points to the tight end position over their last 3 games. And with the volume he's been getting, Chig is set to bounce back in a big way. All right, y'all, that is all I have for Week 18 matchup show. That's all I have for starts of the week. So what does the next couple weeks look like? I will take the week off next week, so this feed will be empty, but I'll be back on the week after to do some accountability stuff, and then we'll take it from there in terms of what the rest of the off season will look like from a dynasty perspective, as well as some redraft content for next year. But we'll keep you guys posted on all that. But again, no show next week. We'll be back the week after to discuss some accountability stuff. But until next time, y'all, have a good one. Love y'all. Appreciate y'all. And yeah, see you guys soon. Peace.